I'm Frances Callier.
And I'm Angela V. Shelton.
And we're Frangela.
You know what you need in your life? The Final Word podcast.
Yes, you do.
That's right. It is the final word on all things political and pop cultural.
Where we make real news real funny.
Where we inspire you so you can hashtag resist.
Subscribe and get a new episode of the Final Word podcast each week. It's the news we think you need to hear.
That's right. We think you need to hear it. Okay?
Yeah, it's what we say so.
That's right. And because all we do is give, every Thursday you can listen to our hysterical podcast, Idiot of the Week.
We round up the stupid because you know what? Somebody has to.
Okay. All we do is give. MSW Media.
Welcome to Feminist Buzzkills Live, the show that hasn't slept or showered since last Sunday. I'm Liz Winstead, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Marie Kahn.
Hello, and Moji Aloreil.
Hi, all. Coming up on today's show, it's Midterm Mania. We're bringing you the good, the bad, and what it all means for abortion access.
And joining us to pop off on all of it is comedian, filmmaker, and creator of AMC's Indefensible, Jena Friedman.
And Diane Horvath, an OBGYN and owner of a brand spanking new clinic in Maryland, is here. She's going to talk about providing abortion care in all trimesters of pregnancy in this hostile new world.
But before our guests join us, your Buzzkills wanted to break down some specific abortion-related consequences of the midterms that you won't be hearing on cable news. I mean, last night was intense. Moji and Marie and some AAF staff and some friends came over to my house. I made some vegan chili and some cornbread. We watched the returns come in, and it was a roller coaster of love and hate. It was a lot.
Definitely both. It was a roller coaster of love and hate, I think really captures it. It was, I'm glad we were together. It was so nice to be in communion. I feel like we need to more normalize midterm election events, because I think that'll go towards, building up midterm, both shame and excitement. Like, be ashamed if you haven't voted and excited to vote, because that's what you're going to talk about. I'm glad we were together. It was just so up and down. It was like, yay. Oh,
yes.
Yay.
You were kind of reminded how stats work a little bit. Like, ooh, I did really well on that. It's week 1 out of 16. And then you realize you get grades later in the night and you're like, oh shit, this is what's going to happen. You have hopes that say one thing, and then you look at another state and you're like, Georgia, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, it also feels like, I'm sorry, but God bless Steve Kornacki, Mr. Peanut Butter Pants, because I think that it would be, without somebody explaining to you when certain counties report, like what these numbers mean, you would be panicking for no reason, and there would be no reason to watch it because you would just be lost in the way things work. And as we break down all of the things that happened, and especially how they relate to abortion in a couple secs, it's really helpful to understand that some states just take longer. Some states have weird rules on when they release ballots. Like, there's all kinds of shit. And like, it was just crazy. And, our gang of folks at AAF, we've been gathering together and felt profound disappointment since 2015. We gathered for the Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump debacle. That was a sad one, just getting so drunk and then being so sad. With the Brett Kavanaugh hearings, we were together.
That was like the worst weekday brunch ever. I feel like we were we had like blankets and bubbly, and we were just crying.
Well,
and this is just watching the testimony. Like, this is just watching the hearing. Yeah. That was just watching it. It was very emotional.
I just felt like nobody should be watching it in their computers at a co-working space. It just felt wrong. And
Mhm.
so I think having support is good. So we ate some good food. I'm going to put my chili recipe in the show notes, y'all, because it's really good
Yes,
chili.
It's really
It's
good.
great vegan chili. Everybody loves it. Meat eaters love it. People love it.
You said it had chocolate in it, Liz? Cocoa powder?
Cocoa powder,
So good.
cinnamon, beautiful chunks of sweet potato and beans and tomato and garlic. And it's a very hearty chili stew. And then if you want to load it up with sour cream and cheese, it would be great too if you wanted to put meat in it. I just didn't because people have varying needs. So I know it's very yummy. So enough about that. I think we should impart some wisdom to folks on how a lot of this shit is going to play out for abortion access, because this is a pretty important podcast. And I think we've got some wisdom to offer up that you're just not going to see from the recycled punditry that has been happening all day and will be happening throughout the weekend. So let's kick it off with the ballot initiatives. And I think Marie is gonna walk us through what happened there, and then we'll talk about it on the backside, as they say.
Yes, Liz. One of the abortion-centric areas of the midterms this last week were the ballot initiatives. So this year, there were 5 states with proposals up for vote that directly would affect abortion access. So first up, we had California, Michigan, and Vermont. All 3 of these states had abortion-affirming measures up for vote. And all of them passed. Pew, 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 pew. Californians now have a guaranteed right to abortion and contraception, and the right to refuse it, which, if you know about the prison system in this fucking country, people need to have in place because we like to sterilize people. There's also some other refreshing updates for the state, like a previously existing viability ban limiting abortion care has been removed. Now onto Michigan. Their voters have hosted a ballot initiative rodeo before, and this time they had to decide if they wanted a constitutional right to reproductive freedom, including abortion and contraceptive choices. And 56% of the state said hell yes. And we will talk more about Michigan farther on, but this is wonderful. And then Vermont, which this is perhaps some of the most exciting news because they have the historic honor of being the first state to actually enshrine the way their ballot initiative went about. It enshrines the right to abortion and contraception in the state constitution. And this means that later legislative action cannot undo this. And it passed by 77%, which is a huge, huge margin.
Wow.
Nothing
This is
passes by
wonderful.
77%.
Right?
Gun
Right?
laws too.
Mhm.
I mean, the wage gap.
There you go.
I digress, though. So Kentucky and Montana, the other 2 of the 5 states, they had bad anti-abortion ballot measures. Kentuckians were asked if abortion should not be protected by the state constitution. And even though they were faced with this word puzzle, they were smart enough to vote no, and abortion access was not carved away. And Montana was faced with the decision of adding unnecessary language around born alive infants. And that was also voted down as well. People showed up. They said, no, this is an invasive personhood modification. It's a joke on creating actual medical care. And they said, we will not have the folks in our state with uteruses bound by this.
And so if you're doing math, we are 5 out of 5 in
Yes.
positive abortion news.
And 6 if you want to count Kansas.
Yeah, and 6 if you want to count Kansas.
Which I do.
Always. So I want to just talk about what these ballot initiatives mean, because Marie, as you laid out the 3 positives, it's only in Vermont did you say that they enshrined it, which means they can't create laws to curb access. And I'm wondering in California and in Michigan, if even though they have this constitutional protection, can the legislature curb away at access? I mean, I think that's the $64,000 question that we all need to be looking at, and not sit back on our laurels, but figure out what that constitutional protection means and make sure that shenanigans can't ensue.
Right. Like, do you have the constitutional protection, but they can still add a 72-hour waiting to it, right? You have a 72, but they can still try to make you like talk about abortion reversal or some such nonsense, or you have the constitutional protection and there's still these Emma laws, which are the ones that make you go to anti-abortion clinics before getting real abortion care. And that's really interesting to me. And yeah, like you said, I would say the $100,000 question, but you can stop at 64. Go, Liz.
Yeah.
Well,
I think,
and it goes the other way too, Liz. Like, okay, we got this positive affirmation out of Kentucky. Kentucky currently has a ban in place that we're going to find out next week, hopefully, like positive news in that direction. But here we have Kentuckians that have affirmed, no, you should get to have access to abortion care, but it's not getting to happen. And so it totally works the other way too. Like, well, who's at fault here then? And how does this get enforced? How does this get enforced?
Yeah.
To the advantage of the person with a uterus that needs healthcare.
Well, also in Kentucky, it's like so maddening because, they voted to say, don't take away, we don't make a constitutional amendment that we don't have the right to have an abortion. But at the same time, they have, their Kentucky House has 8 Democrats and 30 Republicans. Their Senate has 25 Democrats and 75 Republicans. It's like, if it's gerrymandering, if it's that people do not have a fundamental understanding of how these abortion bans happen, I gotta believe that every state should be putting an abortion positive measure to the voters, because if it's a one-person vote, goes to the Constitution, and it doesn't matter what district you live in, I feel like that's the only way at this point that we're going to be able to get abortion rights in these states that are trying to legislate them away.
Yeah, it's really the fastest way to direct democracy, basically.
Yeah.
Because if we have this representative democracy, which is what we have with our Senate and our House, then because of gerrymandering, because of redistricting, which, we're going to get to Florida, but they can create these things. But with ballot measures, with these, it's just the person votes for it. You say yes or no. And it's, if you're voting, your voice is heard. Period. Yeah,
and if you're voting no in Montana and Kentucky and Kansas, what have you got to lose? Vote yes. Just put it on there. Get it there. Yes, I want to have the right for people to have bodily autonomy, and the government out of people's bodies, I think, should be enshrined in our state constitution. I think that you could have that in a myriad of ways. States could frame it in the way that their constituents would have buy-in. I think it needs to start happening.
I agree.
That's
what we should be working for 2024 everywhere.
Let's be working toward that for everywhere, and in off seasons too. It's like, let's just keep doing it. All right, on to federals. I'm supposed to take the lead on this the federal elections, the congressional and Senate races, and I have to tell you, it's good and it's horrible and it's unclear. And so the big confirmed news is that Fetterman won, and it looks like abortion could have a codifying majority in the Senate with that crucial extra human in place to defang West Virginia's Nosferatu. But it ain't over till it's over, y'all. And while the counting is still going on, as of this podcast, we are chewing our nails down to the nubs just to see how many races are going to play out. It looks like we're not going to know what's happening in Nevada until possibly Sunday. Arizona is just, counting as slow as they can count. And so I think there's been some good national takeaways. I think it's pretty cool to have a Black queer Gen Z, the youngest person ever elected in Florida to Congress, who is like focusing on issues of guns and LGBTQ rights and abortion rights. I mean, I think that is the start in good news in Florida. I think that looking at the other federal races, though, it's really hard to contextualize anything on what it means for abortion until it all shakes out in Congress. I think that it's a very interesting thing that we're looking at to see if Colorado 3, we'll call it, changes from Lauren Boebert to this new person. I think that, we just don't know. But I think that, again, Democrats didn't pay attention to the districts they just always have taken for granted. And in New York, a lot of those seats we lost. I mean, when you have Sean Patrick Maloney, who is the head of the DCCC, losing his own seat while running really good races for other people. It's sort of like, hey, my family's falling apart while I'm a really good social worker. Like, what is happening right now? Right. So I don't know. I don't want to spend too much time on what the federal elections mean because I don't know. And it just kind of harkens back to if we can't codify Roe because we lose part of the House or the Senate, heading back to the conversation we had 2 minutes ago about states. So I think we should move on to actually statewide races because I think right now we have some solid tangibles there. And I think that we can offer up some better wisdom there. Right now, I'm just a ball of, I'm not sure because it's all in flux.
No, it is all in flux. States, there's still some flux, but there are, and they were kind of all over the place. But I feel like, we were told to expect this bloodbath. The pundits were like, for the last couple of weeks have been like, it's going to be this red tsunami. And I'm like, we just call that a period.
Which,
but
on a blood moon, Moji.
Moon.
Some like major disappointments, but none we didn't expect. Like Stacey Abrams did not, there was the Stacey Abrams loss, there was the Beto loss. Florida, we can just now accept is not a purple state, it is a red state. But Massachusetts elected a really dope governor. But Florida, right? This is what's going on in Florida. I mean, DeSantis has the trifecta, right? He has the House. They have mostly Republicans in the House, mostly Republicans in the Senate. He's the governor. They can do whatever they want. And it's the last bastion of abortion access in the South. So like, it's kind of a big deal, Marie, you have any thoughts?
Well, it's especially big because if we think about the states around there, you can't get legal abortion in Alabama or Mississippi or Louisiana or Arkansas or Texas. So all of these folks are being forced and pushed and squeezed to either self-manage in their state safely or have to leave the state. So if they're not getting to Kansas, if they can't get to the Midwest, they're going to places like Florida. They're going to places like Georgia. They're looking at the Carolinas. So if that access would disappear for Florida, it wouldn't even be just Floridians that are going to be so screwed. People that are not on the mainland of Florida, people that English is not their primary language, people that are from outside the U.S., but it's also going to be people within the U.S. from these other states that are scrambling because only so many people can fly to DC on a given weekend to get an abortion. There's so many things that rely on that. And if you're saying, all right, a driving distance state from Louisiana, from Mississippi, from Alabama is also now not an option anymore, that makes it really, really hard.
And it also kind of takes you over to Georgia, which is just north of Florida. They just elected Brian Kemp, and their 6-week ban could turn into 0 abortions. You have South Carolina desperately trying. And so the good news is in North Carolina, they even though the Senate race didn't go the way we wanted, they didn't get a overriding majority in North Carolina. So North Carolina's abortion rights will be solidified for now, which means that people can actively get abortions in North Carolina right now. And they're expanding clinics in North Carolina. And that's a positive.
Exactly, because also North Carolina does have a Democratic governor, and because they don't have the supermajority, they can't override him. So this is
they can't change the laws.
Exactly. Huge. So this is a huge one for us.
And I want to wrap out of states quickly to get to our guests, but I do want to also say too that in Minnesota, they got a pro-choice trifecta in this election.
Yes.
It was very scary because they had a real one of those, they're wearing furries and shitting in cat boxes governor candidate.
And it's cold in Minnesota. Like,
yeah.
and
they had a lieutenant governor who was the one who said abortion was forcing women to go to work. And so Tim Walz prevailed, and now they have a trifecta. And so Minnesota, being a state that is one of the havens for abortion, expanding access, getting rid of all of their bans and exceptions, on top of having a legislature that is going to hopefully further access with funds and help, is a really good thing that came out of the midterms. But there is a lot going on. We have Arizona. We have a lot of things happening. And again, the unraveling of how these races are going to play out. That your Buzzkills are going to be covering it. But in the meantime, as we say every show, remember, if you need access to care and you need funding for that care, the best resource that we can tell you is ineedana.org. That's needanaid.org, and that is in the show notes. And now we're going to get to some really good news. We have an incredible guest who's performing some incredible abortions in a state that said, hell yes, we want more abortions. Marie, let's introduce our fantastic guest.
Yes, Dr. Diane Horvath is the co-founder and medical director of Partners in Abortion Care, a new clinic in College Park, Maryland. She's an OBGYN with a complex family planning subspecialty and has been a public advocate for abortion access throughout her career. Please welcome Dr. Diane Horvath. Hello, welcome, Dr. Horvath. Thank you for joining us.
Hi.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me.
To get right off and started, you just got a new governor who's very much an abortion advocate. Tell folks who he is and what that means for abortion care in Maryland.
So we are very, very pleased to have the Republican governor dumped himself. And we elected a wonderful man named Wes Moore, who has been an abortion rights supporter, I think since the beginning of his political career. And we're really happy that he's pledged to release the funds that were voted on by our legislature in the last term. So these were funds to help set up training centers, particularly for advanced practice nurses and other advanced practice clinicians, and that our Republican governor just basically withheld. So the legislature voted on it, they overrode his veto, and he still just kind of hung on to the money, because I guess that's what you can do when you're the governor. But this guy will release the money. So that's a good thing for all of us, for all the patients that will be seen by all of those well-trained advanced practice clinicians.
That's so great. And will you explain to folks what advanced practice clinicians are and what that means?
Sure. Yeah. So there are a few states that have advanced practice clinicians that are able to do abortions under state law and scope of practice. So an advanced practice clinician is sometimes like a nurse practitioner, could be a physician assistant, could be any one of a number of like kind of graduate level trained healthcare folks. Physician assistants is another one. And it's been proven and shown by many, many studies that advanced practice clinicians can safely provide abortion care. And so Maryland's a really progressive state in a lot of ways. And they're following in the footsteps of places like California and Washington that have already allowed for scope of practice changes for advanced practice clinicians. There just are not enough abortion providers. And a lot of communities don't have a lot of access to physicians for anything, much less abortion. And if we can train advanced practice clinicians to do this, which I think we can, and we plan to do at my clinic, I think it's going to be a really good thing for patients.
So this is surgical abortion for people who need it.
Yeah, and also
Nice.
medication abortion.
Yeah.
So, but definitely including surgical.
And your clinic is new to Maryland. Can you tell folks about the type of services? Moji mentioned surgical, medication abortion. What will you all be providing, and why did you want to start this clinic?
So we are going to be we're going to be offering all trimester abortion care. So in Maryland, we have a legal framework that recognizes that there are folks who need abortions later in pregnancy for a lot of really good reasons. And so we are able to provide that care here in Maryland. So our clinic is going to prioritize care past 20 weeks. There's very few places for people to go. And certainly almost all of the clinics providing later abortion care are independent clinics like ours. So that would be not affiliated with Planned Parenthood, not affiliated with a hospital. We decided to start this clinic because there was a need. And my business partner and I, Morgan Nuzzo, who's a certified nurse midwife, so an advanced practice clinician, decided after working in a bunch of other clinics that, we were seeing some things we liked and a lot of things we didn't like. And we thought, we could do this. And it was, I think, in the viewing what abortion access has become and what it's going to be like going forward, we also wanted to do something that wasn't just a reaction to what was happening, and to be able to build a clinic based on anti-oppression principles, to build it on justice, to be the only woman-owned later abortion clinic in the country, and certainly the only one co-owned by a physician and midwife partnership. That's pretty innovative.
When you say that abortion care should be built on like justice and anti-oppression principles, exactly what does that mean to you? What does that look like? Or what do you think it should look like for like larger people who are, interested in abortion care and maybe want to make sure they have that framework?
Yeah, one of the biggest things is that I think abortion care up to this point in a lot of places, not everywhere, but in a lot of places has been built on a scarcity mindset where we have a limited number of resources. We have laws that restrain us. There's all these things that are happening. And so we operate within this really limiting system. And I think one of the things that like white supremacy has done is just kind of killed people's imaginations about what things could look like and what they should look like. And so when we were thinking about what we wanted this clinic to be, we thought about, bringing in an anti-oppression consulting group, which we did from the very beginning to help us basically build a clinic that wasn't something built on white supremacy, that we didn't, it's really hard to unbake the cake once there's something like that in it. But if we started from the beginning, we thought we could do it better. And so we're actively working with this group to basically have a clinic based on anti-racism and a clinic that, doesn't perpetuate fat phobia and a clinic that will welcome people of all genders, kind of all of those things where people get excluded or marginalized from healthcare. We want to make sure that those folks are welcome here and not just like, oh, we'll be nice to you, whatever. We want to be actively welcoming and a place where we can start to repair some of the historical wrongs that have happened.
And Diane, like I've had so many people who do this work and also talk to patients who have said that in the journey of them deciding, finding out they're pregnant and deciding that they need an abortion, people of all genders, people of all economic backgrounds, racial backgrounds, and they have said that oftentimes by the time they get to the clinic, it's the first time that they have found support in their decision. And so to base a clinic in those principles, it's not just lip service. It's very real for people who have come through that. And I commend you on doing that. And I just think that making sure that when people have medical care and they have the experience that recognizes their full humanity, it's crucial because every person's different. So I think it's just really great. And it just lends itself to an experience of just having the best medical experience you can have, that's full of competency and compassion. I've also wanted to ask you, since you're in a state that really honors that abortions need to happen in all trimesters of pregnancy, and we're in a place that has people trying to get their abortions and having to wait later into the pregnancies to do so, just trying to find the means, trying to just like come to terms and everything. Talk to me about what that's like when you are in a position to be one of the few practitioners that are wholly able to provide this care and dispelling some myths around people who have pregnancies and second and third trimester abortions, because I think there's a lot of stigma and a lot of bullshit around that. And I'd love for you to just call that shit out and tell people how we should be talking rather than letting it sit.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite things to talk about. I think there's a lot of stigma and a lot of thought that people just kind of waltz in off the street at, 33 weeks and decide they're done being pregnant and I'm just going to have an abortion. And that's bullshit. And we know it's bullshit. And the people who say it know it's bullshit. It's just like this fantastical kind of made up story to demonize this type of care and the people who get it and the people who provide it. We see people for all kinds of reasons, the same kinds of reasons we see people early in pregnancy. But one of the big reasons is that people are navigating a web of restrictions, which now is even like stickier and, more difficult to maneuver around. So there are people we see who wanted an abortion 2, 3, 4 months ago and have been trying to navigate all of the costs and barriers and childcare and all that stuff. So we work really closely with abortion funds and we have a full-time social worker to help coordinate that care for patients. And that's been a really wonderful thing to have access to. Another reason we see people is folks get really bad diagnoses late in pregnancy. I mean, we see people every week who this is a wanted pregnancy and there's something really bad happening. And I really just hope I hope none of these folks standing outside the clinics yelling ever find themselves in that position because it's really hard. There are also people who did not find out they were pregnant until far later in the pregnancy. And that happens for lots of reasons. Sometimes it's because you're 12 or 13 years old and your periods aren't regular. And so we do see a fair number of young people. And other times it's just because, life happens and like not all of us are tracking our periods on an app, and like people don't have regular cycles. And there are some folks who never have a single symptom of pregnancy, which is amazing to me because I had them all when I was pregnant. But it happens, and it really is something that we see. And I think the important thing is not the reasons why people are there. It's that when a person is there and they need an abortion, they are 100% pregnant and they need that abortion, and they are a person that I am taking care of. I don't actually care very much why people are there. I just need to know that this is what they need, and that we can.
I got my first abortion I was in high school, and I was 14 and a half weeks pregnant. And it was simply because fear. I was like in denial. That's just what happened. And those things happen. And it's like you said, we have so much education and work to do around abortions at any stage of a pregnancy are fine. If they're fine. And so we need to be bold enough to talk about it. Otherwise, they have the narrative. So thank you for that. I think it's important to say that every day and often.
Yeah. And every time we put a line in the pregnancy and we say nothing can happen after this point, like no abortions after this many weeks, we know that someone is going to fall on the other side of that line and they're going to be harmed. And that is
yes. That is not even speculative. That is a fact.
That's a fact.
Speaking of the other people, the anti-abortion community has targeted your clinic. So what's that been like for you guys? Can you tell us what happened and how you're recovering?
So we were targeted with a flyering campaign. Even before we had opened, we were just we were waiting for our permits to come from the state and things like that. And a friend of mine who lives in the neighborhood notified us that there had been flyers left on people's doors on a weekend night. And also in our complex, we're in an office complex with a couple dozen other offices. There were flyers left at all of the offices in our complex. And they basically, it's the same old shit. It's not surprising. This has happened to many, many friends and colleagues. So I knew that something like this would happen eventually. I think what was surprising and really encouraging was the way that the community has rallied around us. And I think these people thought that they were going to come in and say, there's an abortion clinic and they're scary. They put it on like a college campus. Like, who do you think needs abortion? Young, fertile people who go to college. We were contacted by several of our neighbors and in our complex and in the neighborhood surrounding us. We were contacted by some professors and students at the university. People donated to our GoFundMe. So I really think that they picked the wrong community to mess with. And they
especially it's sort of like, hey, there's an abortion clinic. Amazing. Thanks for letting me
advertising.
Yes. You guys did the advertising for us. We didn't even have to come out and tell people we were here. So, thanks. And I think it was jarring. Certainly it doesn't feel good to be targeted. But these are bullies and they're terrorists. And the fear is the point. The fear is the point. And, this job isn't something I'm going to leave because you leave flyers at my door.
Right. And I think that it's important for folks to know that this has been a tactic for years in the anti-abortion movement, and it can take many forms. And it is oftentimes they'll also hit people's homes, they'll hit people's neighborhoods. And so, you're a special person for letting it roll off your back. And I love that you're just like, your flyer isn't scaring me. Die in a fire. But my words, not yours. But I do appreciate you just saying, I do this work because I love this work. And also I think when you have the moral high ground, stupid petty garbage just doesn't affect you in the same way.
Yeah, I know what we're doing is moral and just, and it's the right thing to be doing. And you can leave as many flyers as you want. It's your money at FedEx and Kinko's on all your copies. That's not my problem. So
I think that's awesome. So as you're open now, you've been open how long?
This is our 4th week of seeing patients.
4th week of seeing patients. And are you up and running how you are planning to be when you're up? Are you performing abortions in all of the trimesters now? Are you able to have everything up and going just so our listeners can hear and know you're full speed?
Yeah, so we kind of ramped up in terms of numbers and patient census, just because we want to make sure that all of our systems are in place. There's a lot of things you discover about process that you don't discover until you start seeing patients. You're like, oh, we need a form for that, or what's the best way to get this person from this room to this room? So we're working on those things, but we I think we'll up our census slowly. But we're seeing people in all trimesters. We're doing the full scope of care that we intended to do.
Nice. That is so good to hear. Marie, I think you had a question.
How can our audience, folks that are listening to us, support you? You mentioned independent clinics. First off, you all have been the ones across the board who have been providing the bulk of care in the U.S., both for folks that are here and folks that are coming here to get care. How can our listeners support you and the new clinics like yours that are emerging?
I think there's a bunch of ways. One way would be to get involved and donate with the Keep Our Clinics campaign through Abortion Care Network. So Abortion Care Network, as your listeners probably already know, is the group of independent abortion providers and clinics. And so it's any place that's not a Planned Parenthood or affiliated with a hospital or a private doctor's office. And as you said, they provide the bulk of the abortion care, including almost all of the later abortion care in the United States. So that's a great place to donate. The money goes to help clinics sustain themselves, certainly to help clinics stay open in states where bans have been passed so that those clinics can continue to be community resources for people. Another way is to support your local abortion fund. Patients need funds to get places. Now they're going to have to travel even further, take more time off of work for the trip, things like that. So your local abortion fund is a wonderful place to throw some money. And if you want to give to us directly, we have a GoFundMe. So it is on our website. We're using the money for operating costs and to pay our staff and our bills and keep our lights on until we are able to be running at full capacity.
That's awesome. And we're going to put all of those links in our show notes. Diane, what can you tell? We're an activist organization that gathers people to do care, aid, and comfort. We sort of like to think of us as, helping out with the sort of self-care and emotional support of providers in our communities. Could you just let folks know, we have Operation Save Abortion, which people can funnel through us, but can you let folks know what kind of support and just outspoken support that people can do to uplift your staff?
I think that it goes a long way for us to get supportive postcards, to get messages through our website. We get messages from antis, so woohoo. And it's really lovely for staff to know that the community supports them. So we take, every time we get a postcard or something nice, we put it up in our staff room so that everybody can see it and enjoy it. If you ever wanted to send food or anything like that, make sure it's just all packaged food. We don't want your, homemade baked goods, because we can't guarantee that you're not an anti giving us poison stuff. So, but that's also lovely. People love things like that. And I think, talk to your community and talk to your family and friends and show up when there's a rally for abortion rights and become really irritating to all of the people around you. Make abortion your entire personality, like we all have. Mm-hmm. And just don't let up, and don't throw later patients and later care providers under the bus. Don't be saying things like, I'm all for abortion up to a limit, or I'm all for abortion except when this happens. Nobody has to tell you their tragedy trauma porn to be able to get your support for their access to routine, normal healthcare. So, learn the way to talk about this and then do that.
That is awesome. I would also throw in there, it doesn't matter how many abortions you've had. Let's not judge people on how they choose to have their abortions. Diane, it was so great to talk to you. We're so excited about your clinic, and we're going to be letting everyone know. Thank you for joining us.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me.
If you want to stay up to date with the work of Partners in Abortion Care, you can follow them on Twitter and TikTok at Partners Clinic, and on Instagram at Partners in Abortion Care. And you can donate to their fundraising campaign at the link in our show notes.
All right, we're going to switch gears and move on to the podcast game show sweeping the nation, 6 Degrees of Abortion. This is the game show where Marie and I choose a news story seemingly not related to abortion, and Liz has 6 tries to tie it somehow to abortion. So this is pretty exciting. I think that Marie and I agreed on something almost instantly.
And I found it first, for the record. This is a happy Yeah. Yeah.
So we were watching the trailer for this film called Chevalier, a film about a Caribbean French violinist that is coming out in a few weeks. And it's got a bunch of stars we've never heard of, but there is one that is your question, and that is Minnie Driver, isn't it? So could you, in 6 tries or less, link Minnie Driver to abortion? Also, this movie looks incredible.
This is a crazy Minnie Driver story. So I was with Maggie McPherson, who is one of my oldest friends and has been my booking agent for years. We had a friend who gave us a weekend beach house in Malibu when we were living in LA. Said, go to my weekend beach house. You guys chill out. You've been working really hard. So we're at our friend's beach house and we are watching next to us. These 2 dogs are surfing. They're
The story is so weird.
Diving into the waves and then pedaling and then body surfing back in. And it was like the best Animal Planet thing ever. And then we see their owner is out there with them, and their owner was Minnie Driver. And so you can like totally fact check me with Maggie. So it is beach house, Minnie Driver to me. How's that?
That is pretty good.
Isn't that a crazy story?
Yeah, I will
wild
give you
story.
that. I would literally be like, what drug am I on that I'm seeing dogs?
It was so crazy. The dogs, and I was
sporting
like,
dogs.
And what was nuts was Minnie Driver was out there beyond the break, and encouraging the dogs, and the dogs they did it. I would tell you, they did it for like an hour and a half. They would not
she
get
put
tired.
her dogs in surfing class or something.
And then they'd paddle back out, and then they would, it was wild. It was wild. Yeah. So that's my Minnie Driver story. I know.
Love it. It's good. I think that's a win. Marie.
It's a win,
yeah, we're
right?
taking that.
Yeah,
That's fully a win.
I'll give that.
Thanks.
And also, we'll be seeing, Marie and I will be seeing the movie Chevalier. So if you see it also, why don't you send us an email. We'll talk about it.
Yeah, Chevalier. I like any Chevalier kind of things. I feel like I won that one. That was really fun. But now I'm going to turn it over to you, Marie, to take it to our fake sponsor.
Yes. And now we take you Supreme Courtside to our newest fake sponsor.
Hey, Marie, did you miss your chance to score some sweet, sweet Kanye Adidas before he got the boot from Life?
Unfortunately, I did.
Well, you're in luck because you can still be a styling misogynist in a shiny new pair of Air Jordan Petersons. Finally, a real sneaker without the toxic feminism of some of those other sneaker brands.
Custom designed by the master of masculinity himself, Air Jordan Petersons have a power top, dried beef tongue, and no sole. Perfect for Jordan Peterson and Jordan Peterson alike.
Who you calling a beta cuck now? With those shoes on? Nobody. That's who.
Use the promo code Triggered Feminist Buzzkills for 10% off your first pair of Air Jordan Petersons. Order now before cancel culture comes for them too.
I love Air Jordan Petersons because it just sounds like he's got sort of hobbit feet with some shit on top of them and meat. I like a Jordan Peterson shoe always has to have a meat product.
I love that it has dried beef tongue. It's kind of genius.
It's close to leather, but it's still meat. Jordan Peterson style. Amazing. Oh my God. Should we bring on our next guest?
Yeah. Our
Awesome.
next guest is a comedian, filmmaker, and writer. She's the creator of AMC's Indefensible, and her most recent comedy special, Ladykiller, is streaming on Peacock. Please welcome Jena Friedman. Hi, Jena. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So this whole podcast we've been recording has been just all midterms all the time. So you've got to have some feeling about it. Like, what the fuck are you thinking about this
I mean,
mess?
It's cool that abortion has been a galvanizing issue in a positive way. It would also be cool if Roe had been codified into law before the midterms. It would be cool if a critical mass of people gave a shit about the healthcare of 51% of the population. It could be worse. That's kind of my, that's going to be on my tombstone.
Yeah. I feel like that's been my day. It could be so much worse, but we still have DeSantis. So there's a lot more worse to come, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I know. Oh my God. Where do we start even? All right. Where do you want to start, Jena? We have new special. You had a baby. You're an abortion stan. Like, where do you want to kick it off? Where do you want to go first?
Wow, there's so much. Yes, I have a little human. I'm very tired. I've always been not even pro-choice, but pro-abortion, but that's a whole separate issue. But when you have a kid, you just realize like how no one should ever have to do this. It was really fun to tell abortion jokes pregnant. That's where we can start. I've never had more fun.
Oh my God.
Telling abortion jokes pregnant. I just didn't know. It was like the prop I never knew I needed. And it was so fun. And then when people would get upset, because some of the jokes upset people, not when I wasn't pregnant, but I have a miscarriage joke that people got creeped out by. And then to just be like, you have to laugh, otherwise you'll stress out the baby. It was such a power. Like, you're so disempowered when you're pregnant, but in this one space with a microphone telling these jokes, it was like the best. I just felt like such a troll in such a good way.
Oh, I think one of my favorite videos that I've like, random crap on the internet. And it was like in England, some maybe 8 months pregnant woman yelling at anti-abortion protesters in front of a clinic. And I was like, that is a fucking power move. Like,
Yeah.
there you are. Like, I love that.
I did a show one time in Pontiac, Michigan, and I had 200 protesters outside of my show. And this woman was, I don't know how far, she was like far. She was very much showing, and she was screaming at an anti as she was walking in, and she goes, "It's a person when it can walk out of my vagina and pay for its own fucking cup of coffee." And then she walked into my show, and I was like, wow, she was just like, I'm just going to stop by and just like scream and then just carry on to go to this comedy show. It was really great.
That's how we have to do it. I think that the idea that women who have children are not pro-choice, or like the mythology that they've set up, is so it's all bullshit. Everything about their pro-life stance is bullshit, but that one especially, and how creeped out they are by pregnant women, by women with young children, by breastfeeding women. You know, like, we're so disempowered when we have kids, but there are little pockets of power we can harness for good to just kind of creep those people out that don't care about women. And
it's such another wild thing. I'm like, oh, you want to force us to have babies and then you don't want us to feed them in public? That's weird.
And you don't want to pay. You don't want to pay for us to have like maternity leave.
No.
And you don't want to make it remotely easy for us to be able to take care of these things. Yeah.
No.
Well, I think it's really interesting that the things that they object to are the things that help you be your individual self, right? You don't want to pay for maternity leave. You don't want to pay for, parental leave. You don't want to. You're disempowered by all of it. It's just bizarre. It's like, if it gives you emancipation, they don't want to support it within your parenting. It's fucking weird.
Yeah. Yeah. I hope that at some point we can stop calling them pro-life, because it's really just about control.
We don't.
I know you don't. I know you call them antis.
Anti-choice.
Assholes.
I call them that a lot. Yeah. I feel like that's really descriptive.
But it just, I think it's just the branding they're so good at that. And it's such, at this point, I mean, I don't know what something on Twitter about, like, someone called Beto, sorry. Someone said, what was it? It was like taking away our, like, baby killing, take away our guns. It was just like the same. They were like criticizing him for taking the guns away and also for killing babies. And it was just like that hypocrisy there is so profound that I don't know how people can, like, the mental gymnastics to be like, I'm pro-gun and pro-life. Anywho, that's the whole. I tackle it in the true crime show. We do an episode on Stand Your Ground, and I don't know if you've seen it, but we also have an episode about a law in Wisconsin called the Unborn Child Protection Act, which is insane and still in effect. And it's about like criminalizing pregnant women, pregnant people.
I'm from Wisconsin, so I really appreciate that I didn't know about this particular emphasis you did on that episode. That's awesome.
Yeah, cool. I found out I was pregnant when we just started to go into production. And we were I was only 6 weeks pregnant, but I'm like, I'm just going to tell them so we can greenlight this episode. They would never
Especially if you're nauseous. Like, people don't realize people feel differently at different parts of a pregnancy. When you want that seat on the bus, it might be when no one's going to look at you and decide to assess you in a way.
I was I might not be pregnant by 12 weeks, but I definitely want to greenlight this episode about the criminalization of pregnant women. And no one's going to say no to a pregnant lady.
Yeah, they will all the time.
I mean, they will if you're trying to get an abortion, but
trying to get an abortion, trying to get a seat on the subway. I was pregnant on the subway, and nobody cares. Nobody cares.
I did want to ask you though, you brought up, which is perfect segue, Indefensible. You look at true crime and some of the ridiculous ways that victims are blamed for their own death. Like the whole "she made me do it," the circle jerk coming back to, well, you deserve to die, essentially. Yeah. I was wondering, was there anything that really truly surprised you with that piece and the work you've done there?
I mean, so the show pulls from The Daily Show. It's really, we're using true crime as a Trojan horse to bring in the demographic of women that love true crime, but we're actually tackling systemic. I keep saying tackling. I'm like, our culture is really violent. I wonder why. We're touching on issues, related to structural inequalities. So I didn't know much about the criminal legal system until I started working in it. And I didn't realize the theatrics of it, how it's really theater more so than it is justice, and it's people who can afford the best defense attorneys, and prosecutors who play on people's inherent biases. In season 1, we did an episode on consent defenses or rough sex defenses, which are illegal in the UK, but they're legal here. And one particular episode was infuriating. This woman was murdered.
I'm sorry, rough sex defenses?
So basically, I know we don't have a lot of time, but yeah, there's a defense used when most often it's a woman who's killed. I don't even want to say during sex, because sometimes a sex act wasn't involved. But the defense will say, oh, they were having rough sex and he accidentally killed her.
She didn't come up with a safe word. How did I know?
And this is a bullshit defense.
I'm like, how rough?
It's a bullshit
like
defense.
Mice and men,
yeah. And in some places, it's called the 50 Shades of Grey defense, and it works. And I think the most popular case was the Preppy murders. It was Robert Chambers killed Jennifer Levin in a park.
Yeah, in Central Park. It was Central Park. I remember that. I was like a teenager.
Yeah, and so that's the most in New York. And so in the case that we covered, and I want to be careful because there was no evidence that a sex act was involved. A woman was killed. The guy stayed with the body for 3 days. There's so much to this case. His defense attorney checked him into a mental institution, and then they came back and said, oh, she choked on his dick. And so the media, the whole story is so infuriating and awful. And she was turned into a punchline after she was murdered. Everything about it was awful. We talked to her granddaughter. We were able to rewrite the narrative around how she was murdered in a way that gave a little bit. I mean, you're never gonna make anyone feel better about anything, but I think it was cathartic a little bit to the victim's family. But that's what we do in the show. We take stories and we reframe them, or we retell them, or we try to zoom out and look at the larger structural issues. The episode that's airing this tomorrow is about stand your ground laws in Florida, and particularly about how stand your ground laws were sold as a way to protect women, but we know that these laws are racist, but they're also sexist, surprise, surprise. But they actually don't protect women from the people most likely to kill them, who are their intimate partners. And so that's what that episode's about. The one after is about a law in Wisconsin called the Unborn Child Protection Act, which is insane, and which we're seeing all over the country. But basically, pregnant women have fewer rights than fetuses in Wisconsin and many other states. And that one was interesting because it's a comedic show, but the comedy comes from, similar to The Daily Show correspondent field pieces. I got to talk to a lawmaker who helped pass the Unborn Child Protection Act. And that's you get to mess with them. That's where the comedy comes from. It's more, again, like a cathartic approach to you're so angry, but maybe we can hold people's feet to the fire and kind of fuck with them just to have a little bit of solace. But,
I'm super appreciative of your stand-up, this show. I transitioned out of traditional media, didn't leave comedy, didn't leave anything, because I was told constantly that issues like this wouldn't be interesting to men on shows where progressive men ran them, on shows that are there, right? And so I think it's important for folks to know that it's crucial to support all of these projects. Watch Jena's special, watch the series, because these stories aren't being told. People will never prioritize gender violence. They just don't, because women aren't running studios. Folks on the gender binary aren't running studios. And so if they say men aren't going to like it, it's really hard to get it done. So I just want to give you all the hats off for actually centering these issues and also making them funny and smart.
I learned from watching you. No, but you've
Dad.
been doing it forever. You've been doing it. Not I mean, but just what you went through in the 90s and the opposition that you faced. Like, the only reason, and people still don't really watch, it's like if a tree falls in the woods, and the woods is like a streaming platform nobody has, does it really make a sound? Who knows? But the only reason I'm able to do any of this is because you've done it and fought to do it and keep doing it. And so, I mean, yeah, support my stuff so that Gen Z girls can actually get paid union wages to do this shit.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
And not get fired for trying to unionize. That's also a thing that happens. But whatever.
Yeah.
I feel like what you did with oh my gosh, I'm totally like
Ladykiller?
No, with Indefensible really like informed where you went in Ladykiller, because like in Ladykiller you like really you're like I'm like, oh, we're talking about abortion, we're talking about this other stuff, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, we're talking about
murder
men.
of pregnant women.
Yes.
And then
murdering pregnant women.
That was a lot of the jokes in there, I kind of wrote them as I was pregnant. And as when I found out that one of the leading causes of death among pregnant women is homicide, where's the joke? Nothing's funny about that. But I just have this I have to talk about it. So the special is raw in the sense that there's stuff in there that isn't perfectly honed, because I was literally pregnant during COVID and only doing shows outside and writing as I was going and everything. But everything I talked about, it was, yes, men. My favorite joke, or one of, which is very tough for some people, but it's just about how hard it is to be a man in America, or just in general. And the reason I know is because men are so good at killing women, but yet we still live longer. It's a truism that I just fundamentally find so funny. And it is, it must be hard to be a guy, because they die of heart disease, they kill each other, they kill themselves. It's just a horrible, and what they do to us is so awful. But if there's anything positive to take away, I guess, no, I don't think it's easy to be a man. I don't know. I just, thank you is my answer. I'm tired. I haven't slept. I have a little Ladykiller.
You have a child. You have a little Ladykiller. Yeah, I have one also. I have a little Ladykiller. And it's funny. Sometimes we'll be doing something and he'll be like, I gotta talk. And Liz will be like, oh, he's so, and I'm like, no. We have to teach them now that women are working. Women are working. And so nobody wants to hear from you.
I breastfed mine on another, I'm breastfeeding him now. No. On another podcast, and I was breastfeeding him, and I was like, you know what? This is what your life is going to be. Get used to it.
Oh, that's hilarious. Jenna, before we go, you're a very fun, interesting, amazing person, and you have a lot of things to offer. I think what I want to know is, what do you do when you're not making men feel unsafe? Like, what are your hobbies?
I mean, during the pandemic, I was cooking a little bit. I know that sounds like anti-feminist, but
are you kidding me? No, cooking's the best.
Yeah, I was cooking a little bit. I mean, I've been laying low, but I do. I play tennis sometimes, and I hike in LA because it's LA. Try to get back to New York. My hobby is getting back to New York whenever I can.
It's a good hobby.
It's a good hobby. Well, make sure when you get back that we see you when you come.
Absolutely.
And anything we can do to support all the things you do, it's really incredible. And thank you for your work and being a dope champ. You're doing great.
You too. Thank you all so much for everything you're doing.
Thanks, Jena. Check out Jena's Ladykiller on Peacock and Indefensible on AMC Plus and Sundance TV. Find out more at jenafriedman.com and follow her on Twitter at Jena Friedman. That's our show. Thank you so much, everybody. And thank you, Diane Horvath, for joining us. You can stay up to date with the work of Partners in Abortion Care at Partners Clinic on Twitter and TikTok and at Partners in Abortion Care on Instagram. You can donate to their fundraising campaign at the link in our show notes.
The midterm results are still rolling in, and your Buzzkills and AAF will be working to protect abortion access wherever the cards land. We're in this together. We got you. Subscribe, write a review, give us 5 stars. It's the best way for our podcast to reach more people. And by doing so, you're helping more people learn about this assault on abortion access. To keep up on all the latest repro news, follow us on social at Abortion Front on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. FBK Live is edited by Remy DeTournay and is produced by Abortion Access Front.
Looking for where you might fit in some abortion activism? Look no further than our 5-part training series, Operation Save Abortion, available in video and podcast form. Gather friends to watch or listen together and follow the activity guide for a full experience. Details on the series are at operationsaveabortion.com. And make sure you check out the activist calendar as well, which is chock full of local and national actions and educational opportunities.
Looking for some action? Like be part of the solution action? Join Abortion Access Front for our monthly Exposed Fake Clinics Action Hour, Monday, November 14th at 7 p.m. You'll learn how to warn people online about the dangers of anti-abortion centers and how you can encourage your friends to take action with you. Sign up at the link in our show notes. Also, self-indulgence alert, I have shows, year-end shows at the Parkway Theater in the Twin Cities, December 30th and 31st. Now that we've seen the results of the election and we can feel pretty positive that it wasn't a dire failure, let's go laugh at the dire failures together. You can get tickets at theparkwaytheater.com.
And next week, we'll be talking to 2 people who are challenging a Kentucky abortion ban based on religious grounds. Lead plaintiff Lisa Sobel and co-counsel Ben Potash join us to talk about their lawsuit.
And lastly, join our Patreon. You'll support great content and get cool, exclusive FBK merch and experiences. All pledges support this pod and all of our activism at Abortion Access Front. Pledge at patreon.com/feminist buzzkills.
That's our show, folks. Thanks for watching and listening and hearing all about the midterms with us. Remember, it's not over till it's over, and then it's not even really over. We leave you with the whole ass showing of Joe Jones from Shield of Faith Baptist Church in Boise, Idaho, the Ron Popeil of Christian hate preachers. Have a great weekend.
Look, these abortion doctors should be put to death. The government should take them and slice them up. Not with pizza, okay? Actually put them to death. Seriously, you go back on the news. We're going to go back on the news. They don't want none of this. You know, these people are sick. Absolutely sick.
Feminist Buzzkills Live, the podcast from Abortion Access Front. When BS is poppin', we pop off. New episodes drop Friday. If you want to support our podcast and all the work of Abortion Access Front, like, subscribe, and join our Patreon at patreon.com/feministbuzzkills.